Hello, everyone, and welcome to the PAMS Salon dedicated to street arts. My name is Stefan Segreto Aguilar. I am the head of international relations at Artsena, the French National Center for Street Arts, Circus, and Theater. And I am also the coordinator of Circostrada, the European network for contemporary circus and street arts. I use the pronouns he and him. I'm a Caucasian man in his early 40s. I have a black hair and a black beard. I'm wearing glasses and a very fashionable mustard shirt. Behind me, there is a library, a curtain, a window, and hidden behind the curtain, a typical Parisian building. It is really an honor to moderate this session about reclaiming public spaces through arts, which was curated by the very talented Jin Yim. The idea of today's topic is to pause and reflect for a moment on what we have experienced and possibly learned in the past 20 months regarding how public space was disrupted. Concretely, we will look at three case studies from very different contexts, which will help us explore the possibilities ahead, both in terms of political, social, cultural, and aesthetic developments. What has changed in our practices? What do we want to keep in the future? What upcoming risks do we need to be aware or concerned about? Because of the current C-19 pandemic, artists, producers, and audiences have had to adapt, change, transform like never before, not only in the way they think, act, work, but also in the way they live and survive. The scars, physical and symbolic, may be starting to heal, but a lot still needs to be done in terms of caring. And I mean caring for each other as much as caring for the public space. Today, I am joined by three fantastic speakers, whom I'm going to introduce to you very quickly. Our first speaker is Joanna Tukkanen, who's based in Kuopio, Finland. She's the artistic director and one of the founders of Anti Contemporary Art Festival, which has been operating since 2002 and presented hundreds of projects, site-specific contemporary artworks and interventions in the urban context of Kuopio. She's an artist, curator, and researcher, and she has been very recently appointed head of cultural services in the city of Oulu in Finland, where she will lead general cultural services and work as the director of Cultural Center Valve. And for your information, Oulu will be European Capital of Culture in 2026. Our second speaker is Weila Amatata Machad. He's the current director of the International Low Fat Art Fest, an international contemporary art festival in the Loei province in Thailand that focuses on multi-level collaborations between art communities and civil society organizations to expand the use of contemporary arts in social sectors. He's also an independent contemporary art management researcher, and one of his current projects revolves around developing an open art network called Prayun for Art that includes art enthusiastic volunteers from all backgrounds to create alliance networks and stimulate transnational sustainable creative ecosystems. Finally, our third speaker is Har-Young Lee. She's the director of General Kunst, an artistic company that creates audience participatory performances without professional actors. In the beginning, she got interested in street arts to subvert theater norms. And recently, she started focusing on alienated beings, territories, classes, and gazes from the public space. So here is our topic and our speakers, and this is how it's going to go. We have 60 minutes together, and each of the speakers will have 10 minutes to present, and then we'll open the floor for questions for about 25 minutes. Our first speaker is Joanna. Joanna, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Stephanie, and everybody, and thanks for the invitation to be here. I'm very happy to be here with you today. I'm a white woman in my late 40s. I'm wearing a pink shirt and a pink glasses and a black cardigan, and I have a reddish brown hair. I'm standing in the anti-festival office with some flower pots in my background. So I will now share my screen with you. I have a PowerPoint presentation. I hope you can see it. As the introduction already mentioned, Anti-Festival has been produced in Kuopio, Finland since 2002. So we have been around for 20 years. The last edition was our 20th festival. And we work with innovative artists on projects across art forms and practices that explore and expand ideas of public space and the urban space. So artists in our program can come from any background, from performing arts to sound art, visual art, etc. But the kind of common element is the connection to the city and a site. So we work with diverse practices, creating diverse encounters in everyday spaces and places in the city of Kuopio. In Finnish, anti means a gift. So we think of the festival as a gift to the city of Kuopio and the citizens who live here, and of course, our visitors of the festivals and our international colleagues who follow the festival online. All our events are free to attend, and yes, we are based in Kuopio, Finland. So where the heck is that? Finland is, as you all know, in the edge of Europe, in North Europe, and Kuopio is a town in Central East Finland. It's in Finnish standards, it's a medium-sized town with about 120,000 people living, but of course, it's a very modest and rather in a global scale, a rather small city. When we think about the festival, we are really embedded in our context, in our local context of the city of Kuopio. So the city hosts the festival, and artists from around the world inhabit the spaces of public life. We think of the idea of public space and site in a very extended and wide sense, and we often although we use public spaces like streets and parks and squares and the lakes, the forest, etc., but we talk a lot about everyday spaces and places where people spend time or hang out, and we kind of want to invite people to experience art in their everyday environments. So those can also be like schools or offices or all kinds of sites, starting from the tax office or a bank or sometimes even a private home. Our main activity is the festival, but we also have a year-round program of artist residencies and different kind of socially engaged projects where we work with local communities. And since 2014, we are also awarding the Anti-Festival International Prize for Live Art, which is valued 30,000 euros, and it's one of the richest art prizes in Finland. And in the framework of the prize, we are also presenting a program called Shortlist Live, which means that the 4 artists who are annually shortlisted for the prize, we show their work in the festival. I have a slight problem of my slides moving, but let's see. Okay, here we go. So I just wanted to say a few words about public space and understanding public space. I often refer to French philosopher Henri Lefebvre's concept of the right to the city, by which he means about and talks about right to urban life. And this, what he means is the like citizens and people's right to different spaces of meetings, encounters, and exchange. So we like to think about artworks as sites to encounter each other in the urban complexity, to encounter differences, different people, different communities, different values, different beliefs, etc. And artworks as sites of kind of playful creativity, a playful encounter to exchange ideas and values. So one of the key kind of missions, if you like, of Anti-Festival is to kind of increase the visibility of diverse voices and diverse bodies in the public realm in the city of Kuopio. So we often work with marginalized communities or sort of specific communities that are maybe challenged in some way to also increase their presence in the public life of the city. And generally speaking, with that, we want to promote a diverse and equal city, but also we really work hard to promote equality in the art world in general. So whereas in 2018 or 17, where this picture is from, we were doing projects like the 10-minute dance parties by Geoff O'Farrell, where we put tens of people in a small container to dance together and have a very steamy, hot dance party. Of course, this all changed a couple of years ago with the global pandemic. This, for example, this image is from the Puyo forest, where we had an artwork by a Japanese artist Shoji Kato, in which he created a kind of contemporary coffee ceremony for 3 people at a time. So a very small number of audience at the time attending in an outdoor environment. And then last year we hosted a global city, local city lab, which was a kind of a international or kind of global meeting place of artists and curators, which we originally wanted to host here in Kuopio, but due to the pandemic, that was not possible. And we changed that into a kind of hybrid form where we had a group of local artists working in Kuopio on site, and then the international artists working in their local context, and they sharing their work and ideas online via Zoom in various workshops and working sessions on a daily basis. And then this year, for example, we had one of our leading works was by Finnish group Bauhaus, a work called A Great Mess, which was presented at the Jätekukko landfill, where again, this was a performance for a rather small group where outdoors, where it was possible to keep social distancing, and of course everyone was wearing masks, etc. Or another example how we worked during the pandemic is a work by 600 Highwaymen's project, where it was an international work which we presented at the festival in 2 parts. One part is a phone call, and then this where you see the picture is from the part 2. And this was an artwork where the artists do not travel themselves, but only the artwork travels, and the production is done entirely by our team here locally. And another example is of kind of what I call the relocalizing of our activities. So working more with local artists, like here, Veera Launonen's and Ilkka Kivela's media work collectors, which was shown on several media screens in the city. So we still think that the festival should function as a site of exchange between artists and various audiences, and we were still trying to do and have done 2 international festivals despite the pandemic. So this kind of idea, fostering the idea of city as a place of encounter and exchange and difference, is still what we have been trying to do in the midst of the pandemic. That's it from my part in this section. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Joanna. So inspiring. I've been a huge fan of Anti-Festival for so many years, and I was lucky enough to be in Helsinki in September. So I actually attended the Bauhaus Great Mass performance, and it was really strong. And might I say that all the examples that you shared, I'm suggesting all the audience to go dig deeper, because there is so much more than just one sentence. And I know that we're going to keep it short and sweet, and it's going to be 10 minutes each. But please, this is just, an appetizer for you to go deeper. So thank you again, Joanna. Our second speaker is Weila. So Weila, the floor is all yours now.
Thank you, Stefan. And my name is Weila. I'm Thai, Asian, black hairs, 160 meter tall. I'm staying in my room in Bangkok with 2 cats. If they interrupt the screen, please don't get annoyed by them. And for more important, we still have a curfew on 10 p.m. today. So I will share my story. Yes, I think you may already know Thailand, about our foods, about touristic destinations, about cultures, especially from golden eras of Thailand that our Thailand Tourism Authorities and our government proudly export through Thai Pavilion in World Expo all the time, without caring about contemporary issue like the other countries. And some of you may know our famous artist, right? Pichatpong Viratsetakul, and the renowned film directors and visual artists, or even Pichet Kanchun, the choreographers, dance artists who perform his show over 100 states around the world. But sadly, their voice in art and culture scene here are nothing much to our policymakers, even the public outside the art community. The sad fact is our art community is very small. More than 90% of contemporary art activity here in Thailand are organized by independent parties or even foreign institutes in private owned public space. And if you talk with Thai practitioners to think about where is the public art space that they can practically open the conversation for their works, their exhibition space, I do sure that only name you may hear is Bangkok Art and Culture Centers, or BACCs, that barely survive through political uncertainties and unclear long-term policy to support from Bangkok Metropolitan Administrative Office. And that the situation in the capital city of Thailand, that the place that should be the richest in terms of art and cultures, can you imagine the rest of 26 provinces in Thailand? The intervention on this limitation continuously occur throughout our modern art history. I can give you some examples like Chiang Mai social installation that happened in Chiang Mai during 1992 to 1998. The Bangkok Theatre Festival that in the early age of its festival around 2002 to 2014. They happened in the small community next to the Chao Phraya River, but now they moved to BACC in 2015. And also about the Khon Kaen Manifesto and Ubon Agenda, those are currently run in Khon Kaen Province and Ubon Province. Yes, of course. I forget to put the photo of my festival. Yes, of course. Our Low Fat Art Fest stepped into this intervention movement also in 2019. And all of this is pre-COVID situations of contemporary art in public space and for creativity in Thailand. We do have our right to be in the public space, but the place for our creative right are limited. Last month, I curated one Thai artist to work in Transnational's mobile festival named 3Cs in Tokyo. And on that platform, one moderators of the platform asked our artists from Thailand that how COVID-19 affect his artistic practice and expression. And his answer is nothing. He doesn't explain the reason behind, but I think his answer also shocked the moderator on that event. So the moderator didn't ask about the explanation why the COVID-19 didn't affect you at all. But as a curator, producers, and art manager who work here in Thailand, I have to say it's nothing, because even without COVID-19, he barely received an opportunity to support his practice and expression here anyway. Back to our operation. In 2020, we planned a new social interventions of our festival, Low Fat Art Fest Volume 4, by moving it afar from the center of the country to somewhere that contemporary art concepts are unknown to its people. We are live in Dan Sai district, Loi province, 400 kilometers from Bangkok. This place is the origin of Thai style Halloween called Pita Khon, where the folk cultures and spiritual belief of life are still active. After a years of working there, I found out that the public space are not the only critical issue of the big cities, like Bangkok or Chiang Mai, but even in the small mountainous town is the same. There is no community centers or public park are abandoned. Even the bicycle park lot are misplaced all over the town with no signs from authority to make it right. So we dream to utilize our art festival to discover the town potential through the artistic presentation during the festival. But in April 2021, the latest wave of outbreaks style at heart, it moved our rank in the world infection charts from number 100 plus to top 30s. The national lockdown has been announced again on 9th of July, 14th day before our festival start. So the recreation and entertainment activities in the public were prohibited. All cross regions mass transportation was stopped. Even social gathering in private space were also limited. During that time, our big art festival are resilient to the situation by spending their resource to open the virtual space to give access to public to interact with their activities. But for independent one like us, the cost is unexpected. happen, we cannot afford it. So we have a massive conversation with the local partners, and we came up with an alternative direction for the festival. From the exhibition of art, we moved to co-create a pacemaking project. The relationship between the artists, festivals, and organizers and locals are changed from presenters and audience to collaborator. So while utilizations of the public space has been rejected by authorities due to the concerns of infection, we successfully activate creative space in several private property that allow the public to access, such as unused land or space in front of the house, even the private business area also in town hospitals. Rather than pressing an alien artistic object into the community, we inspire the local by the concept and knowledge from the artist to create the artwork that tell their own story, placing them in the place that is visible to the public to show their existence of identity and belief during the crisis. I can't say that our movement will be the part of the artistic development after COVID-19 era or not, but this movement, at least we are, as an art practitioner, I can have an opportunity to contribute our knowledge and skill to society in this depressing moment. And that's all from me. Thank you.
Thank you, Weila. Such powerful words, images. Really, I was very happy that Jean put you on these panels because it allowed me to know better your work. I'm super excited. And honestly, I hope I can come to Thailand and see it for myself as well. Just one comment that I want to make for the audience. If you have questions, you can send them over. We will treat them by the end of the session, but really start thinking about your questions so we can, I have my own, of course, but it's interesting to hear yours too. So thank you again, Weila. And our last speaker today, Herjung. Herjung, the floor is yours. You're muted still.
Oh, I just made a mistake. So hello, this is Haeryang Lee. I have black hair. I'm in my 30s, a woman. So I'm in my office, so I'm going to present my lecture. So I'm working on the audience participating performances in Seoul. Before then, I was just focused on the theater work. So when I got to work on the street art, I could feel that this is really free, beautiful. As you can see here, so the street art seemed like the perfect answer for me. So that's how I got to continue working on the street art work. So today I'm going to talk about the street art and the new public space. So the new issue would be the COVID-19. Of course, we are faced by challenges because of this pandemic, but there was already some dilemmas even before the COVID-19. So I'm going to talk about such learnings and my experiences and the work that I was doing. So even before COVID-19, the streets and public spaces of Seoul were not some free places that anyone could occupy and enjoy. So rather, it used to be a place where only freedom that looks cool only on the surface and some smooth, pretty, selective diversity based on permission and control also allowed to a limited extent. In 2017, there was the Seoul Street Art Festival. And there was the collision between the protesters and performance of the Seoul Street Art Festival. And there was big chaos. So the performers couldn't do their performance as well. So everyone was having difficulties at the time. So at first, I sympathized with how angry the performance must have been. But I got to think about how smooth do we need to make a performance on the street. And do we need a controlled street with an environment where we can focus on the performance? These are the questions that I got to think about. So this case particularly resonated in me because it reminded me of a performance scene. So the street art that I admired and that I was impressed by was in the form of an old man standing on a barricade and talking about his life. But it seems like that in the reality, I was thinking of the street where I have conflicts with the elderly and the people who have different opinions from mine as something cumbersome. So this was something that I couldn't understand myself. And there was one other experience. So after having my child, I went to watch some performances on the streets. And when I went to watch them, actually I couldn't, because in the movie theater, they make statements that the audience should be of age 7 or older or should be quiet. But actually for the street art, people say anyone can enjoy freely. But still, I felt that the theater's norm was still in place even for the street art performances. So I was with my child, and I got to realize that my child was not included in the everyone that people say that the street art performance is open to. So I got to realize that some people might feel excluded in these performances. So in some festivals, they even prepare with the English-speaking volunteers for the foreign tourists. But however, the barrier-free discussions are now just in the beginning stage to be talked about, and it shows how exclusion in public spaces of the city is planned and how street art can be used to contribute to such exclusion. So from these dilemmas and questions, I got to work on the performance called Picket Line. And this is a proxy protest by those who cannot easily come out in the square. So it was during the COVID-19 pandemic situation. So I thought because my proxy protest little figures are very small, so I thought there would be no problem. But the whole festival itself got canceled. And because I was funded by the public institution for the project, I was really worried that this work would result in any impact on the spread of COVID-19. And I couldn't get the permission from the city of Seoul to use the Seoul Plaza. So even the thumb-sized little protesters couldn't stand the plaza, and I had to reconsider the streets, the everyday spaces, the public spaces where these protesters were supposed to be. So I try to pay attention to the context of the connection between the boundaries of the public spaces and the streets. So in South Korea, many protests take place in front of the National Assembly. So which means that these gates are the boundaries to which protests are to be stopped. So I put the proxy protest dolls in a delivery box and sent to the National Assembly. And there were some lawmakers who participated in the project. So because for normal times it is limited to the people of the National Assembly, not only people who are walking on the streets, but also the lawmakers who are in the National Assembly. So a lawmaker who participated in this performance said that the National Assembly was a very good choice in the sense of connecting the story to a place that requires imagination for the words and stories of the street or the words that did not come on the street. And we used the Google spreadsheet, the special program, and it was quite interesting for me to read and arrange the unspoken sentences using a system designed for systemic work. And I got the inspiration for this format from Dotface Online Queer Parade. So it used the system Instagram, and they changed the feed and the hashtags. So they could show what they were trying to symbolize and present to the people using the feed and hashtags. And the slogan that they used was, "We make roads that never existed." So these slogans and practices are considered to have great implications for the street art scene. So a place for street art is an everyday space, and I think it's very important to discover and reinterpret an existing place aesthetically and thematically. And the online space, the online venue, is already a large part of our lives. And if it has a certain sense of place, I believe that the meaning and the significance should be used in street art too. So the queer parade used Instagram. So it's like making a stage rather than making a location for the performance. They're just going into people's everyday life, what's already there, utilizing the elements of people's everyday life. So I was able to imagine the place as a way of changing an existing system. So while I was working on the street art works, I just focus on the fact that street art is a means to introduce the public that people can enjoy art outside the theater or outside the art gallery. But rather now I try to think that we have some power to create the power of understanding and reflection by seeing and experiencing the world we belong to differently in our everyday space. So now we are faced with the COVID-19 situation, but instead of just looking for a temporary alternative or just try to adapt or wait for the situation to come to an end, I hope that we can make some change by paying attention to these issues that arise from the current situation. So this concludes my presentation. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Hye-ryung. It's so nice to hear what you have to say because you really make a bridge between The very essence of street arts to be extremely engaged and political, and then you bring it to the digital world in order to claim and reclaim this space as a public space. So really very exciting work. Thank you for sharing this voice. So thank you to the three speakers. Now it's the time for question. I think we have about 20 minutes and some questions are already popping up in my chat. So I have a first question for Johanna. The question is the following, what do you care most when you program for Anti? What do you have any principle? How do you make your curatorial strategy, basically, if you have any?
Thank you for this huge question. I could speak, hours about this topic, obviously. But to put it very briefly, I would say that, well, first of all, like I was saying, we really pay attention to creating diverse encounters for our audiences. So what we really think a lot about is that we have different kinds of artworks to engage with. So, both from more the visual art world to participatory, socially engaging performances, something to just by accident to stumble upon on the street, or some works that kind of are congregations or assemblies that bring people together in a specific moment and time. So we think a lot about these diverse encounters and our artistic practices. And then we often work with themes. So we have like a thematic focus, and sometimes we also collaborate with a partner that comes from the outside the art world in a thematic festival, which one example is our collaboration in 2015 with the Kuopio Marathon. So where we had a works related to art and sport and endurance and body, etc. So we have very different kinds of things at play. And then of course, we are part of many European, global, Nordic, local, Finnish, etc. Partnerships and projects that produce co-curated programs or works to our festival. So we are kind of balancing these kind of different programs that come through various co-curation processes, and then what I often talk about is our local kind of the local urban and social political context. So of course, all this has to resonate with what is happening locally and what is relevant locally. And a festival that has a 20-year history, of course, we also don't think of single editions that, okay, one festival is just one program, but we actually think of the festival more as a durational kind of artwork in itself that kind of evolves and expands and develops. So we are aware of the things that we have done in the past, and that's how, for example, we think of kind of like exploring the urban context in Kuopio. So we don't always want to work in the same places or same context, but we kind of want to keep expanding. So we look at the programming also kind of more holistically over a longer period of time, not just within one festival. But of course, there are very diverse agendas at play, which is impossible to say in a few sentences, but hopefully this makes sense. And one more thing to add is that not always, but we often have an open call, which is an invitation to any artist from anywhere in the world to propose ideas for us. And if we have an open call, we usually select about half of our program through the open call and about half through these various other curatorial processes.
Thank you so much, Joanna. Very clear. I'm pretty sure the next edition will be filled with Korean proposals because you have so many fantastic artists here who are listening to us. Thank you so much. Talking about social political context, we have a question for Weila, which I'm gonna read to you. Thai government seems to be not very supportive for performing arts compared to other countries. What is your motivation to work, your drive to work in a performing arts sector, especially in the public space? And how do you overcome these difficulties?
Yes, thank you so much for the question, and thank you so much for this artist, Stefan. I have to say that when you're thinking about the big dreams, you have to like conquer the world or something like that, and you have only like $1 or $3. I think it's not different. So I told about this because if you're thinking about art supporting from Thai government between visual art, film, and music, and also performing art, it's like okay, yes, it's different. The visual art is big one. Second one is the film, and the smallest one is performing arts. But if you compare everything together, it's not so different much. So because we don't like we don't have like long-term policies to create our own contemporary art movement here. We always talk about soft power, but there is no solid or concrete policies to drive on. Like for example, like in my presentation, I talk about BACC. They still like worry about their futures all the time. And to go to the question why I believe in performing arts, because like I learned this from school in Europe. I joined the like art management course by Curtis or something like that. I found out some knowledge that the policy makers or politicians always listen to the people because the most important thing for them is the vote. They need a vote. So that's why I try to implement this idea in our societies because I have to say performing art is for me is the most human-centric art compared to others. It's not just like object and displays and people go there and see and like journey to your own realm of thought or something like that. But it's always communicate. And I think this is the thing that we should work on to spread the idea how we can utilize contemporary art to the people by using performing art. But when I say using performing art, because we don't have to use theaters, we don't have to use plays, we don't have to use dance all the time, because there are some special characteristic for the performing arts is we can find something called performativities in any kind of art. So it's transformable. So that's why we can work in many aspects in creative way. Like for example, for the last Low Fat Art Fest on 2019, we create a theaters play through a book. Yeah, it's adventure book, so it's like performing art in the form of a book, something like that. That's the thing that why I believe and focusing to work in performing art here.
Thank you so much, Weila. Not only is inspiring, it's true. I believe that too. Otherwise, I wouldn't do this job. But the transformative power of performing arts, and especially in the public space, it's quite something. I have a question for Har-Jung now. So in the presentation of Weila, there was something that struck with me. He worked with an artist. His name is Atsuhiro Koizumi, if I noted right. And when he was asked what changed for him, the COVID-19 pandemic, he said nothing. What does it make you feel?
I found that part really interesting, actually. So with the COVID-19 situation, I just gave birth to my second child. So I had to take care of my child at home. So COVID-19 actually didn't affect me at all. I just focused on doing the artwork only then I just thought about COVID-19, but in my daily lives, I think many other people would have thought that, of course, the COVID-19 is an urgency, it's a imminent problem, but already many problems and challenges already have existed even before the pandemic situation. So I really could relate to the artist's words.
Thank you so much. Indeed, we all try to have one vision of what happened, but definitely COVID has been an accelerator or a magnifier for something that was already happening. Since we don't have questions from the audience right now, I'm going to take the opportunity to ask my own questions to our beautiful speakers. You said something, Johanna, in your presentation that I really loved. First of all, the fact that Anti means a gift. So basically that Anti has been a gift for the past 20 years. So what I would like to ask you is, what do you think it could be the gift for the next 20 years for Anti?
Wow, that's a beautiful and inspiring question. I think Anti is a very sort of flexible concept, and if we look back at the history of the festival, we can kind of see different phases in terms of like how we connect to the city and our thinking of kind of space and the urban context and site responsive or site specific art in general. It's also a period where we see that the city of Kuopio has changed a lot, the art world has changed a lot, and contemporary artistic practices have developed and changed a lot. So I think the festival, and one of the sort of success stories behind the festival, is that it has been so flexible that we have been able to kind of move and adapt and develop like alongside the city and the art world and with the artists. So I think this is it's a fantastic kind of force behind the festival, and which has also meant that we were able to do it even in the middle of the pandemic, although I also must acknowledge that the pandemic has not hit each corner of the world equally, so that we have been in a part in Finland where we have had all the time relatively good conditions, also with of course very many restrictions as well, but we were able to do of course with some adaptations the festival last year and this year, but it has meant that it's a flexible concept, so we can change according to the world, and I think this in the next 20 years, I think this will be a kind of a key kind of value to protect, so that we can see that a festival can be a way of kind of or a kind of tool almost to develop the city, develop with the city and with the citizens and artists. So I always like to think of these kind of three elements. We don't only work with the artists, we also work very closely with the city and our local context and the local people and communities. So to kind of keep fostering this connection, I think will be the kind of success in the future as well, I think.
Thank you so much, Joanna. And just to add up on what you were saying, since you cited Henri Lefebvre at the beginning, the right to the city. The city is also beyond the urban context. It can be rural, it can be anything. We use the word city, but we have to understand again just the place where all the living things live, not only humans, but also animals and plants. There is a lot to be said also around this.
Absolutely, you're exactly right, and we should definitely take into considering all kinds of connections and entanglements that where we meet each other, whether human or non-human.
Thank you. I've actually a question from the audience, which I'm gonna ask to both Weila and Hairiung, so you can share the floor for this. At the opening forum, we talked about new or different ways of international mobility, circulation, and also touring, probably more connected with local context, local artists and community, to try and be greener, more inclusive, to use digital technology and so on. So how this transformation, or at least new perspectives of mobility, in your opinion, will impact street arts and public space artworks? It's a big question, and you basically have 1 minute to say what you think. I know it's hard, but let's try.
Yeah, thank you. I'm not sure about the forms of performing art will change by this approach or not, because I have to say is we don't have opportunity to experiment much here in Thailand due to the limitation of resource. But the good thing is the COVID-19 forced us to work on our own ways. I mean, in the very limited resource way, because no one can travel at all in this time. So at the beginning, we already don't have the budget enough to travel. The artists come here to Leh Art Fest or Low Fat Art Fest Volume 4 at all. So we have a plan to ask them to thinking about how we can create the artwork together by sending the instruction of the artwork come to Dansai district. And then we already opened a lot of conversation between the artists and also the communities by translation of our festival member. Yeah, it take a long journeys to create in each specific artwork that happen. So for me, I think they open a new possibility that we can cooperation internationally, globally, with these ideologies. Yeah, but in terms of the format or platform, I'm not sure yet.
Thank you, Weila. Hairiung, what are your thoughts?
Public space issue and environmental issue should be connected to each other for COVID-19 situation. And when we are moving into other region, we should have consideration on the environment. When we are thinking about the artwork, we should think about a way where we can consider the environment into our perspective. And to that end, I think the important thing is that to work with the community. And I talked about the boundaries of the public spaces before and the boundaries of the everyday space, and we need to pay attention to these elements. And we get to see some small plazas and squares in the city. And this is what producer Yin mentioned. And those small squares exist in the cities, and we can use and utilize those kinds of spaces in the street artworks.
Thank you so much. It's very interesting for me to hear from you, because all of you, you are in the periphery, but you're the center of your own periphery at the same time. So it's very interesting to hear from you from this, because I'm sitting in Paris. So, I need to shake my assumptions all the time. Our session is coming to an end, but I have a very last question for all of you. It's very quick. In one word, what would be a tip you could share with future generations, who, both artists and producer, who want to engage in the public space? I mean, in one sentence, what can you tell them? Who wants to go first?
I can start if that is okay. I mean, the first thing that comes to my mind is the local embeddedness. So So a real connection to the city, a real connection to local people, local communities. This is my one word.
Thank you. Perfect.
For
Weila.
my one word is empathy. It's very important if you have to work with a community who have no ideas what you're talking about. I didn't know about art at all. And when you work with the street art or public art, you have to connect with a lot of people who like walk around, they might do something didn't connect with you. This, if you don't have this one, it's going to be very problematic to work in the public art.
Perfect. Heriung. Yes,
네.
perfect.
But the public space and in the everyday space, when we are doing work in those spaces, you can find some hidden spaces in those public spaces and everyday spaces. And there are some places that already exist, but there are some places that are not seen to many people, that are hidden from many people, and we can look for such hidden places.
Thank you so much. So we are 1 minute after the session, so we're all good. I want to really thank the speakers for their generosity. Thank you, Joanna. Thank you, Weila. Thank you, Heriung. And the audience for your attention and question. I want to thank also the translators and the technicians behind the scenes. A special thanks to Jin Yim for the trust, to PAMS and Korea Arts Management Services for creating such a beautiful space to discuss these topics. I wish you all a great PAMS week and see you next year in Seoul. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.